David Stafford, AJ Green, Marquez Pope, Reggie Brown, No Sean Marino, Muhammad Massaquoi.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Herschel Talkers. Later in the show, we got another big get for Big Sean. He was able to interview Kansas City Chiefs former Georgia tight end Orson Charles in a great interview. That'll be right after. That'll be a little later. But we got Big Sean on the phone. How we doing today?
Doing great, Trey. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, Georgia looked great last week, 41-0 beating Tennessee Volunteers, the Voltards. Georgia looked great. Defense was junkyard dog good. Basically shutting them out in Knoxville was a big KO, a big stamp for the program. So Sean's gonna get your thoughts on the game, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, first of all, what's not to like about shellacking Tennessee 41-0 in their own backyard? It was just a very impressive performance by the Dogs. Like you said, the defense was dominant. The offense made plays. And I think that I forget who it was that said it, but or maybe I read it online where somebody obviously compared the defensive philosophies and how we kind of have a similar defensive scheme to Alabama, but offensively, we kind of mirror them as well when you think about it. Alabama's known predominantly or for the most part during Saban's regime for being a power run team that passes as much as necessary to keep a defense honest, and Georgia's kind of the same thing. I mean, you just got a stable of running backs that just kind of wear you out, and from you get enough of a middle passing game to keep a defense honest. I know there's probably people out there that are going to make, a good bit from throwing a pick and almost a second one. But, it's important to keep in mind that, Tennessee does have some really good outstanding defensive backs. I mean, Nigel Warrior, everybody was after that kid. Mike Abernathy, everybody was after him. So, even though they're not having, success in the win-loss column, there's talent there. And, the thing to me that I liked is that, when Fromm wasn't able to get it through the air, he found ways to still get in the end zone with his legs.
Yeah, very, very good points. What I wanted to turn into, what do you think is the big change in maybe the culture from year one to year two with Kirby's team? 8-5, lost some very close games to this year, just knocking out teams, dominating them with defense and looking like Alabama-esque type team. What do you think has been the big change from year one to year two?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a couple of other factors, but I think the biggest one as a whole is the fact that you actually have a reliable offense now. Now, the things that are kind of giving you a reliable offense just go around to think of the fact that really you have a quarterback that's able to complete and be an effective short to medium range passer. Whereas with Eason, he's struggled to make those passes and really is only had success either late in games or with big bombs, which isn't really going to get it done. I think the other thing, too, is you've had, substantial improvement along the offensive line that have allowed, to have holes opened up so that, our running backs can be effective. So, when we were talking way back over the summer and the spring about the things Georgia needed to do to improve offensively, more consistency from the quarterback and more consistency from the offensive line were the two factors that we brought up time and again. And, they've kind of answered the bell, so to speak. I think the other thing is from the head coaching standpoint, I think Kirby's a lot more relaxed and confident in his role as a head coach. I think last year, you saw some struggles with clock management and other things, and he's not really necessarily having those same problems this year. Now, granted, for the most part, he's been ahead in the game or in the games, and sizably ahead for the most part with most of them. But so those issues could still potentially be there, obviously. But for the most part, from what you can see, he seems a lot more comfortable in his skin as a head coach, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely agreed. Definitely great points. If you had to, looks like looking at some of the injuries, got a little banged up at the end. Trent Thompson, defensive lineman, went out with a sprained MCL. Dalvin Bellamy, I believe, kind of hurt his hand or his wrist. He's got a club on. He'll be okay. And then Reggie Carter, I believe, went out with undisclosed. I was probably thinking it was, concussion. But you think going forward, looks like Trent Thompson's out with a week-to-week sprained MCL. Who do you see possibly stepping up on that defensive line and making a difference and filling in?
Well, interestingly enough, and I got to give credit where credit's due, because my man Trey Tucker, my co-host here, was one who pointed this out. Tyler Hark had surprisingly started 3 of the 5 games so far this year for Georgia ahead of Trent Thompson. So I think immediately, that's probably who you're looking for to fill that void behind him. I think you're probably looking at Mikael Carter. He seemed to get a good number of snaps. David Marshall as well. I mean, the thing is even without Trent Thompson in there, they still rotate 8, so there's plenty of depth. And that's not to say that a loss to losing Trent certainly doesn't hurt, because it does, but there's guys that are capable of stepping up and being effective in their own right there. As far as, Reggie Carter goes, I think he gives you everything he's got, but really he was kind of more of a relief guy for Roquan and Natrez Patrick. There's plenty of guys behind them with Jaleel Liggins and Rice and some of the other guys that I think that have already been getting playing time that I think will continue to just step up and provide that. And, Bellamy, I think Bellamy's going to be good to go, but again, you've got depth there with, you're getting some, help from freshmen like Walter Grant. You've also got, who's 15, the smaller defensive end that we got down there?
DeAndre Walker.
Yeah, DeAndre Walker. I didn't want to mispronounce his name or, misstate his name as well. That's getting plenty of snaps. So, I mean, the nice thing for Georgia is there's plenty of depth there. So, fortunately, it's not a situation where, like we had in 2012, where, a single injury really maybe, is devastating to your defense.
Definitely. I think it's great with depth. I think that's Kirby, the last 2 recruiting cycles, really getting some 4 and 5 stars depth. That was one of his biggest things he said is, depth. I think he learned that from Saban. So his recruiting's paying off. If you had to be a little nitpicky about the game, what would you point out? I would definitely have to say point to, Fromm, even though, 2 touchdowns rushing was great, had a couple of tip balls, probably might have been 2 to 3 picks. He was 7 of 15 for 84 yards, but did have 1 touchdown throwing, and he rushed for 2. So going forward in the hot debate, everyone's always saying is, is Easton going to get another look? What would be maybe the only reason to put Easton in, besides an injury going forward, possibly in a Florida or an Auburn game?
Well, to me, like the only reason really that you're looking to potentially put him in anywhere is if Fromm struggles, if maybe he hits that freshman wall where just, he's completely confused out there and is throwing too many balls to the other side, or, if you've got an injury. And I guess, too, if I can add a third one, I think probably just getting Easton some snaps in there, game in, game out, probably isn't necessarily the worst idea either, just because, again, you're only 1 snap away from being the starting quarterback again. And so just kind of getting meaningful reps when they can is going to be important to making that transition as smooth as possible. I guess kind of related to the first question you asked about, if, anything you can nitpick. Yeah, I mean, Fromm didn't necessarily have the greatest game statistically passing, numbers wise, but again, he played against a pretty good Tennessee secondary from a quality standpoint. I'll tell you, the one guy I think that we really need to get a little more consistency out of is Miko Hardman. There's been several times where and again, I understand it was a pretty difficult pass that was thrown his way, but he's kind of struggled some with drops so far this year. And again, I understand he's transitioning back to being a wide receiver, not only for the first time in college, but for the first time in 2 years. But he kind of presents that explosive big play guy that can take a short ball and take it long. And so for that threat to be taken seriously and to give you greater strength on offense, he's got to be able to come through with catches.
Yeah, I agree. He did do well. He broke some runs on punt return last week. So, yeah, I think it's just he's a work in progress. Another one that, I've kind of been yelling, and I don't know if he's in the doghouse still. I think you need to start trying to get it to the tight end more, Isaac Nada. I mean, I was even at Mississippi State. I know we didn't really need him that much, but he was open several times. They would go to the first or secondary receiver. So I wish they get the tight end involved more. But Fromm's still doing great. I know Kirby's trying to be all secretive by saying we're going to go with the best quarterback in practice. But, yeah, he's going Fromm this weekend, no doubt. And transition into that, got Vandy. Vandy beat us last year on homecoming and upset 17-16, so definitely Dogs are not overlooking them. It's going to be in that middle school stadium Uncle Lou calls in Nashville, a little over 40,000. Point spread is about 17.5 to 18 points. Vandy is competitive. Got coming off a loss, 38-24 to the Gators last week in Gainesville, and then got blasted the week before, 59-0 against Bama. So I'm thinking they'll hang with us in the first half, but I think we pull away with more athletes. I will say probably the one threat they have is Kyle Schumer is one of the better drop back passers, pocket passers, pure we're going to face. And then Ralph Webb, his senior year, I believe, he's kind of struggled a little bit this year. He's only got 198 yards. I'm not sure if he's a little banged up. But I want to get your thoughts about Vandy coming up and what you'd like to see.
Well, first of all, you've got, no disrespect to the Gators and Gator Nation, but they're struggling this year, both due to injuries and suspensions. And they beat the brakes off of Vandy. For all intents and purposes last week. And again, I think you need to evaluate each game for what it is, just being one game. But when you kind of look at, the fact that Florida pretty much needed a Hail Mary pass to beat Tennessee, and we went into Knoxville and just, blanked them 41-0. And especially when you factor in how well we've played every other game this year, I think you can fully expect that Georgia's going to kind of have a similar performance. And so, I don't even know if Vandy necessarily hangs with us in the first half. They certainly could. But again, I think that Georgia could easily win this game by 24 points or something similar to what Bama did, I
agree. Totally agree. If I had to make a prediction, I'm going to say 31-10 Dogs, something like that. I think we won by about 3 scores. I could see them getting up for us because they are pretty decent in Nashville, but I think it's one of these that defense just going to give Kyle Schumer, going to pick him off, make some picks. They're going to hem up Ralph Webb, so I like Georgia rolling in that one. Jumping into slate of games, not the greatest schedule of games this week, but I'll rapid fire throw a couple at you, get your thoughts on it. One that would help us out, jumps out at me, but I don't think they have a shot. LSU at Florida in Gainesville again. This will be the second of 2 of 3. They're all at home games. They got Texas A&M coming to Gainesville. So it's LSU with Waterboy, Algeron, coming off a loss to the men of Troy, 27-21, which is a terrible loss. He might be on the hot seat already. So get your thoughts on that. It's Florida -3. I'm surprised the spread's this low. Do you think LSU Tigers have anything for Florida? You like Florida in this one?
They both struggled at times. To me, the difference is that Florida has struggled and found ways to win. LSU has struggled and lost games, including Troy, that they really should have won. So
at home too, which is surprising. At night, I believe.
Yeah. So to me, again, I think the Gators win that game. Certainly could be wrong. Again, it's any given Saturday, any team can win. But at this point, just based on what we've seen so far, I expect the Gators to win.
Yeah, exactly. Looking at another one, which is interesting, you got Miami with St. Rick. Mark Rick is going, I believe they're at Florida State. This is -3, so you got wide. Is it wide right or wide left from the?
Well, you actually have both. I think you had 3 versions of wide right and 1 version of wide left. The original and most famous ones were wide right 1 and 2 in the early 90s. Then you had a wide left when Miami had that resurgence in 2000, and then I think in 2001 there was a wide left actually, or another wide right, I should say. So, but
used to be a great series. That was probably one of your favorite series in the 90s, wasn't it? I know you were a little bit of a Miami fan or Florida State fan back in the day. You love some Mark Rick as offensive coordinator.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely. It definitely was. It was a great series. You had a lot of tremendously talented players. A lot of whom ended up in the Hall of Fame um, recently. And so, in that game, to me, Florida State has not been the same since Francois went down.
Yeah.
They've struggled against teams that I really thought that they could have and should have beaten, including NC State, and lost. To me, you got an undefeated Miami team, maybe not necessarily of equal talent to Florida State in most years, but I think because of the fact that Florida State's struggling so mightily without Francois, I think that they find a way to get it done and to get one for him.
Yeah, it's number 13, Miami at Florida State. Also, to throw this one at you, who do you think is the better coach in that one? You want to go with Mark Richt or Jimbo Fisher?
Good question. I go with, I think you got to compare the resumes, right? So, I mean, to me, Jimbo's got a national title. Rick doesn't.
Yeah. Very good point. There you go.
Yeah.
I like Miami on that one. Miami's defense is surprisingly good this year. I think they held Duke, which was 4-0, to 6 points. So I like Miami giving Justin Blackman, the quarterback, all kind of problems. And we'll look at this one real quick. This is the 7:30 ABC game. I believe that's game day. You got Michigan State 3-1 against number 7 Michigan Wolverines at the Big House. Michigan minus 10.5. What's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, again, to me, Michigan's at home. They've got a very talented team. Michigan State, I think, is they struggled last year, and they may be coming back this year, but they're still having to go into the Big House. So at this point, I'm going to give Michigan the benefit of the doubt and roll with them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the Big House. Harbaugh, that defense is playing really well. Not really sure what Michigan State's got. They're a little better than last year, so I'll roll with Michigan. And last but not least, Trey's Dog of the Week. We were 3-1. Last week I didn't get time to put in one. I'm glad I didn't because I was going to go with Michigan State in the points. I would have been sadly wrong. So I'm 3-1. This week I like Thursday night special. Take NC State plus 3.5 against Louisville. You got Chubb's brother on the defensive line, and the running back, I can't remember his name, for NC State's really good. So take NC State and the Wolfpack in the points plus 3.5 for Trey's Dog of the Week. And this is Sean's big get. He's going to have Orson Charles playing. I believe is it practice squad he's on, or he's on the team now? Do you remember what he said?
He's he's currently on the practice squad with Kansas City.
Kansas City Chiefs, which is great guy, great interview, and that's coming up. Former Georgia great Orson Charles, tight end, and currently with Kansas City Chiefs practice squad. Thank you and enjoy.
Yep.
Hey, what's going on, Orson?
Hey, how you doing, sir?
Pretty good. First of all, just wanted to thank you for giving us some of your time today. You're definitely one of my favorite all-time Bulldogs, although you
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Of course, now you were there a little bit after I was. I actually graduated from law school in 2008, so you and your high school buddy Aaron Murray, I guess, tore it up from 2009 to 2011, right?
Yeah. We had a good run.
Yeah, you definitely did. I was there in Jacksonville in 2011, where you guys had a huge game, huge win. And you guys are both Florida boys, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We both went to the same high school, and almost close to being able to play on the same NFL team.
Right, because he got drafted by Kansas City, and you were with. I guess you're now with Kansas City. Is that correct?
Yeah. I'm with them now.
Okay. Well, yeah. Why don't you, before we get too far into it, why don't you kind of tell some of the audience about what you've been up to since you left the University of Georgia?
It's a crazy story, but the number one thing that I've been up to was trying to pick free, which I did. I finally walked across the stage and allowed to have my family there. So I walked across the stage last year and
Awesome.
got my degree in construction. So that was something that was not going to wait. Coming back after every season and going to class for. And now, while I was going to school, I was training up there in Atlanta with DSA. My trainer, Lillian, trained with her. Trying to stay in shape for every season because every season is a tryout. And lucky enough, I'm still at it, and I'm on the Kansas City Chiefs team.
Yeah, well, congrats on that. That's
Thank you.
yeah, that's big. I mean, I can only imagine. I mean, to me, both college and law school having to focus on just studying, isn't of itself is a lot to do. But then, you've got to factor in, being a student athlete and practice and film study and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, so it by far wasn't easy. I think a lot of time we talk to students at UJ and they say that we have it easy, but we by far don't have it easy. It may seem that way because we have a lot of help, but you have to put in consideration that we're studying for classes and we're studying for football, and it's like an all day thing. So we'll get up probably 6 or 7 for study hall, where we're studying for our classes, and we have mentors to make sure we stay on track. And then we go to class, and then we go to practice, and then we come back to study hall. So in college, it's definitely a grind that nobody really enjoys, but we know that we have to do what it takes in order to stay eligible, and also in order to get our degree.
Yeah, there was always a part of me that felt sorry for you guys because first of all, you guys are definitely I think celebrities on campus, but I imagine too that it's just you've always got you're always under the microscope. You've always got people watching you, and they're probably trying to get you certainly got to watch out. I would imagine for people that are trying to associate with you for the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah. It's always a hard thing to do, but after a while, you kind of weed your friends. You kind of weed the people that kind of steer you in the wrong direction. Because they start showing red flags and whatnot. But for the most part, you don't really get those type of people. Like how Georgia, they praise the football team, they worship the football team, and they just want to see us good. They want to see us happy and win games. So I can honestly say everybody that ran across at Georgia, was in it for the right reasons.
Well, that's good, and that's certainly refreshing to hear. And so I think you ended up preface the fact that you and Aaron Murray were both from Florida. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
When you guys were coming out, I guess you can't really necessarily speak for Aaron, but what were some of the other programs you were looking at when you were a senior trying to decide where you're going to go to college?
So after my first offer from Iowa came, they started piling up. And one thing that my coach really did do a good job with is he was like, hey, I know this is all new to you, but I really want you to focus on the season. Because at the time I still had a lot of growing to do. I had just got to the program. I was trying to connect with my teammates and trying to figure out that college was just added more distraction. So I kind of put that on the back burner after we won our state game. And then I started taking my business and trying to narrow it down. So I pretty much had every offer, but it was definitely hard to figure out what 5 I wanted to go to. And I think it was the same thing for Aaron. Aaron had every offer that you can think of, but Georgia, just like me, kind of just won him over just by the coaching staff and how down to earth they was, how Christian faith-based they are, and how they wouldn't lie to you. And to this day, if I was to do it all over again, I would still pick Georgia and Coach Frick and Coach.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and you certainly hear that. I think that's kind of what was a catch-22 for a lot of people is, because, and I've heard it from people in the administration at Georgia that Mark Richt would, he'd never, sacrifice his integrity by, taking shortcuts when it came to recruiting and other things like that. And he seems like such a huge example to the young men that you're trying to develop, right?
Oh yeah, by far. And his motto was this: you're coming here to help us win games and pursue the next level. If that's what God's willing to do. But his main thing was making sure that we become better men. Because his thing was, I feel that we don't have enough men out there. So my job is to help you become a better man. And once he said that and some other things, he wanted there. Like, yes, we sat down and talked about football, but on the other aspect, we talked about life.
Yeah.
And that's not what all the other coaches were talking about.
Yeah. And I guess you and Aaron Murray both. Well, first of all, you seem like a very faith-based, individual, which is great to hear, especially in this day and age where there's so much crazy stuff going on. Did you and Aaron Murray both kind of have an idea that you wanted to play together, if at all possible, or was that something that just it was a factor, but ultimately you guys were going to pick where you wanted to go?
So Aaron, we never once talked about it. That's what I he never once tried to persuade me because he committed before I did. Like, he committed before our senior year, so he can really focus on, so he can really focus on his last year in high school. So he committed, and a lot of people keep thinking that he kind of convinced me to go. He really didn't, because so once he committed, and I put it towards the end, I really had no idea where I wanted to go. My dream school was Miami. I always wanted to go to Miami. They always had a good record with producing, NFL tight ends and whatnot. But then after, praying about it, thinking about it, talking to my family, my mentor, my pastor, and taking a 5 visit, I just felt at home every time I went to Athens.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like that's a true friend there that you got in there, and that he kind of let you make the decision that was best for you, and not necessarily what was the best for him as a quarterback, right?
Yeah.
And I guess speaking of guys, I think that have become men. I believe Isaiah Crowell was there, I guess, for 1 year when you were, I guess, your last year in Athens, right?
Yeah. He was. We was roommates for a short period of time. A great kid. Love his mother. Mother's so sweet. And also a great kid.
Okay. Well, yeah, it seemed like that he'd had some issues there, but I guess after he left, it really seems like he kind of turned things around. Do you keep in contact much with him?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I'm sure my mom still keep contact with his mom, but it's one of those things that it takes a bad situation in order for you to wake up. And I'm glad he woke up when he did, and he's killing it. He's killing it now in the league, and I'm happy for him.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Um, and so right now you're with Kansas City. You got I guess several SEC guys. I guess you practice a good bit with Justin Houston.
Yeah, Justin, Ramik. We got Justin, Houston, Ramik Wilson, and Chris Conley.
Wow.
And then we got Bray and EB from Tennessee. And then we just picked up a kicker from Georgia Tech this week that really helped us win the game last night. So I can't really give him too much grief about going to Georgia Tech until we start playing them.
That's right.
We have a couple of SEC guys on the team.
Well, that's cool, man. How tough is it practicing against a guy like Eric Berry?
It's very good, and it's one of those things that we practice against. Arguably, I think the best defense, in the league. So when you play against other teams, it's like, oh, okay, well, I've already practiced the best. You can't show me anything I haven't seen. So and we go back and forth, and that's what making our team good, because the practice is competitive. There in camp it was very competitive, and that's what you get up for. That's what you strive for. That's what you love. We're going on the field. We're fighting every day. And then when we come off that field, we're hanging and we're communicating, we're talking, we're chilling. And that's the camaraderie that you want on a football team.
No, absolutely. And it seems like, I mean, the Chiefs have just got so much talent, and I think absolutely, and certainly you guys won a ton of big games at Georgia. I mean, you would know what having a good locker room chemistry is like. Is locker room chemistry? You hear so much about that term. Is that something that tends to get overblown by the media, or is that something that's important in terms of wins and losses?
That's definitely something important in terms of wins. I think now these days that's going on. I think the coaches are doing a good job bringing in great people that's not going to stir up anything, and our leaders like Justin, EB, and Alex are making sure everybody's really on the same page and we're coming together. And I've been around a lot of NFL teams, and I don't think I've come across a bad locker room team. We all come together. We're around on the field, we come off, and we leave everything on the field, and we come together off the field, and when we're boys, we hang out.
No, that's impressive. How easy is it to lose morale in a locker room?
It's one of those things that I don't know if I can answer that question because I never experienced it.
Sure.
And I think that you have to give the credits up to the coaches because they're doing their research on guys and they're making sure that they're bringing in good guys that hey, if something goes wrong, they're not going to blow up. And that gives credit to the leaders on the team too, just making sure like hey, if somebody blows an assignment, then we're leaving on the field. We correct in the film room, and that's as far as it goes. Like you're not going to go in the locker room and point fingers, or if somebody gets in a fight on the practice field, you're not bringing it in the locker room. Like that's like the number one rule. You're not bringing it in the locker room, and the leaders make sure of that, and the coaches make sure of that too. So I can't really answer that question.
No, that's certainly a fair response. I guess getting back to you and Aaron both being Florida guys, you guys had some big games in Jacksonville. I think back to 2010 where you guys practically won that game on your own. Florida ended up winning it in overtime, but then in 2011, you ended up kind of getting the first win for Georgia, I think, since 2007. How important was that game for you guys, just as Florida kids, to go in there and win?
So let's bring up the game important.
Okay.
But I think everybody has a game that's more important. Like if you ask a Georgia boy, it was the most important game. They'll probably say Georgia Tech or Auburn. But if you ask like Aaron and I or me, we're definitely going to say Florida because we're from Florida. And that game is definitely important because we all got grief for leaving Tampa and coming to Georgia.
Yeah.
And you know that that's going to be the most watched game at 3:30 on CBS. So you make sure that you're well prepared. You know what you're going to get. We always have that bye week before we play them, so we're dialed in for 2 weeks and making sure we're able to leave every and anything on the field so we can get that victory.
Yeah, sure. And you sometimes hear in the media that playing in Jacksonville's a potential disadvantage for Georgia just because I guess of the proximity of the University of Florida in Gainesville to Jacksonville versus Athens. Do you think it's a disadvantage to Georgia playing in Jacksonville?
I mean, to be honest, it doesn't matter where we play.
Yeah.
We can go in the backyard. So I would have loved to play in Gainesville. I would have loved to, go in there and beat them and experience how quiet the stadium is. And I would have loved for them to come to us. But we don't control that. So wherever you tell me to play, that's what we're gonna play.
So, yeah. No, I agree with you as well. And, I think that we'd had Sean Bailey on last week, and he had said that, the stadium split 50-50. So it's not really like it's an away game, I mean, regardless of where it is, you're going to go and play, especially if you're a competitive guy like you. And so I guess my next question would be, when you made that leap to the NFL, what did you find was the most difficult adjustment transitioning from college to the pro game?
Understanding the business, and it kind of took me a while to catch on. Just understanding that, hey, if you don't get done what they want you to get done on what they think you can get done, they have tryouts every Tuesday. They're gonna bring somebody in to take your job. So understanding the business aspect of the NFL and just understanding how critical every play and every step to every movement is. In college, you'll probably get away with a bad step, or you're probably stronger than somebody and whatnot. But in the league, no, it's all about being smarter than that person and making sure that you take no false step. So And then one thing, it's different in college. The adjustment, after a big game in college, we all, get together and probably go hang out. But in the league, like everybody has their wives and family, so you come to work, you play, and then you go home to your family. So it's really no hanging out with the boys like how it was in college. So
Yeah.
some of those things was a good transition, a difficult transition for me, but lucky enough, I caught on when I did.
No, sure. Another topic that gets, that you hear a lot more about is, a lot of the head injuries and the long-term impact that playing a game like football can have on you. Is that something that, causes that you kind of heavily consider in terms of, week in, week out, how long you intend to play and whether or not you want to continue the grind?
I pray every day that guys got the. I'll be able to play 4 or 5 more. I'm saying I don't go to a game for a year hoping on that. So
Sure.
however long my body holds up, I'm play.
Yeah, sure. So putting it in God's hands. That's cool. And then, do you still follow the Georgia Bulldogs a good bit today?
Yeah. I follow the West on Instagram and see them big win. We had to see, had a couple of passes and they pulled it out. But yeah, I love the energy. Even talking with Herschel and Ramik and Chris. This is the Georgia that we know, and we're kind of jealous because they seem a little better than when we was there. But I'm definitely happy, and it was about time that we get back to everybody talking about it. We had a couple of down years and whatnot, but I'm glad to see them boys go out there and represent the G, and be proud of putting that G back on. I think that over the years we've lost the respect, we lost the honor to put that G on. And every time, we put it on, we was like, okay, well, we know the history, we know what we're getting ourselves into, we're ready to put it on and leave it on the field. And now I'm starting to see that, when I watch them play, and I'm excited. It makes me happy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, it just seems like they've got. To me, they look as good as they have since that 2012 edition, where they made it to Atlanta and were one play away from a national championship game.
Yeah, by far. Yeah.
And how do you think your last team would have matched up against this current version of the Bulldogs?
Oh, we would have beat them.
Like that.
Yeah, we would have beat them. No question about it. You have to understand like who we had. Like, we had boys. We had Sean Williams, Rambo. We had Alex. I think Ramik was there my last year. And then we had Avery. Darren Locke. Jarvis. Then on offense we had Aaron, me, Rontarius Wooten, Chris Conley, Michael Bennett. Like we had the boys, so it was Ben Jones, so it would have been without a doubt.
There you go.
and then we have Morgan B. Smith. Like, no, yeah, we would have.
Who's the guy on that defensive group with Jarvis and Ogletree and Sean Williams that was the hardest hitter? Or that hit you the hardest? How about that?
That hit me the hardest?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say nobody hit me the hardest. I would say one of the person hardest to block that we would go at it each and every day would probably be Jarvis and Cornelius.
What made each of those guys so difficult to block? What aspect of their
because
game?
they do that leverage. They do that leverage. They understood where their help was, and I'm more of a player that I need to hit you first. I'm not an absorber, so I got to hit you. They knew that, so we'll just go blow for blow every time, and it definitely made me better, made them better, and it made them one of the hardest people I had to block in the SEC.
Oh man. Well, that's good. Well, I mean, we're all glad that you're, that you're doing well, that you got your degree and stuff like that. Any thoughts about, possibly getting into coaching or training or something like that when it's time to hang them up?
See, I mean, I don't know. I talked to my trainer Lillian from there, and I told her I don't know if I would be a good trainer or coach. Because I'm always so used to, hey, you tell me what to do, and I'm going to do it the best of my ability. But she swears up and down that I'll be a good coach. And I kind of during the off season, trying to expand my horizon. I talked to James Coley, the receiver coach. I know him because he recruited me at Florida State, and he thought that I would be a good coach as well. So it's definitely something that I would look into. I got my degree in construction, but it's something I would look into and see if I would enjoy doing it. I just know they put heck of hours in.
Yeah.
The heck of hours. But if it's something I'm passionate about, the hours wouldn't mean nothing to me.
No, that's true, and I think it's because of your personality, because you're just such a friendly, approachable guy, but you've also got some great knowledge base and natural leadership. I guess those are all the things, attributes you probably look for coaching materials. But I guess it's like anything else. I mean, the passion's got to be there to do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for those kind words.
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. Did you I'm sure that having Mark Rick let go of Georgia, that had to be difficult for you. What did you think about the hiring of Kirby, and have you had much time to interact with him? And
So I had time to interact with both. Even when Coach Rick left, he sent a message out to everybody saying that he had a number, and any of the Georgia guys that still want to contact him, here's to keep it. I actually wrote him, and he actually back a couple of times. So, I'm happy that he kept that. But I also came back to Georgia, had a chance to talk to Kirby a couple of times because I know they put on the PO network. So he was there, and they finally cranked that back up. And then I came to a practice and sat down in his office and talked to him. But for both parties, I'm happy. They're going back home.
Yeah.
Played at Miami, Kirby played at Georgia. It seemed like everything worked out how it was supposed to. And I follow both people. I'm a Mark Rick fan, and by nature, I'm a Kirby Smart fan too, because he's leading the Bulldogs. So, in a sense, I'm happy that both parties are happy. Cheering for both of them, and they're both good people.
Yeah, I mean that's a good way to look at it, and I think Sean Bailey's words kind of had a similar echo to him, where loved Mark Rick, loved everything he did for him, but have embraced Kirby, because I can imagine that's got to be a difficult spot for Kirby to come into as well. I mean, just following Mark Rick, just the amount of love and respect people had for him. It probably kind of feels a bit like being public enemy number one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, by far.
So, well, thank you so much for giving us some of your for your time and your insights. And we're certainly pulling for you. We're hoping that you get elevated to the game day roster. And we're certainly proud, Orson, that you got your degree in construction management.
Keep in your prayers.
We
I do get
we will most certainly send a prayer out for you on that. So,
all right, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. You have a good rest of your day.
All right.
All right. Bye.